Hey guys, I am here with Jahel from Wrestling with Gaming. How's it going, man?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. I just stumbled across your channel maybe a couple of months ago, and it was one of those nights where you're scrolling through, you can't sleep, and YouTube has that recommended next video. And I always I'm so jaded about that nowadays because I've gotten burned so many times where it's like 10 minutes in and I'm like, I fell for the clickbait. And I think the first one I clicked on from you was your story about, what was it, the full motion video games of the 90s.
Okay, I am shocked that YouTube is recommending that to people.
Oh, I've been hooked from there on. It was like 1 in the morning. I needed to be up early, and that was it. Like at least 2 hours of my life was gone after that. So that was
sorry, man.
That was awesome. I love it. Absolutely love it. So, what even got you started into these things? Like, are you a documentarian by trade or something, or?
No, so it's really weird. All right, so I've always been doing like creative stuff. Either like I've always been in bands or something, and when I was in bands, I was always like the video editing guy and that kind of stuff. But with the YouTube thing, so I was well, I guess I still am a professional wrestler. I just barely wrestle now, but I was like not taking that many bookings. I got real like frou-frou about, well, if you're not paying me X amount, I'm not gonna do it. But I want to do something creative, so I'm like, oh, I'll just start doing YouTube. But what I started doing was, I started playing these like really weird. Sorry, my dog is going through a situation right now. So I started playing these really weird like visual novel games that were just like the more absurd I could find, the better. And I would just get drunk and play them, and I'm just like like talking to my girlfriend about how stupid they are. And then one day I'm like, I'm just gonna record it and upload it to YouTube. So that's actually how it started out. And I was playing, and I just kept finding the most sexually deviant games I possibly could. There was one about like golden showers, and I just couldn't believe like these games were made. Anyways, and do you
remember the names of any of them?
That one was called the water closet. And the intro, it has like a intro of it's like visual novel style or whatever, but the intro is like just all these pictures of toilets, like real pictures of toilets with like this song. It's like dun 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 dun, and every like beat is a new toilet. Anyways, and you have to help these girls with like their problems going to the bathroom, and that's how you get your lovin'. And and so I was uploading all kinds of like weird stuff like that, and one day I learned about Bleem, and I was like trying to find videos on it, and LGR had one, but it was like a really old video and it wasn't like really in depth, and like none of my friends knew about it, so I just read up on it. I'm like, well, I'm just gonna make a video about it. This thing was cool. I want people to know about it. People like that, so I'm like, okay, I'll make another video, and then people really like that, and then the more I did it, the more I found I really enjoyed it. And then eventually this guy commented on my channel. He's like, hey, if you really want people to take your documentaries seriously, maybe you should take off the sexual, like the visual novel of people having sex off your channel.
That is funny. That is funny.
This was before the apocalypse too, and I'm like, you know what, this guy's probably right. So I'm glad I took him off.
How long ago was the Bleem video?
I think it was November of 2016, so just shy of 2 years.
Wow, that's quite a lot of growth in that time. That is really awesome.
Yeah, thanks, man. I got lucky. Like, how everybody complains about the YouTube algorithm? Like, it's been good to me. So I'm like, oh, YouTube's great. What are you talking about? It's perfect.
Yeah, some of my friends and I are complaining twice as much lately because a friend of ours put up an excellent video. All of his videos are really high quality, but this one out of nowhere got 1 million views. So
wow.
Yeah, we're all verbally abusing him on a daily basis. But he got caught on the other side of the algorithm, just right place at the right time. Same videos he's always done, but now he's Mr. Million. So yeah. Here comes the abuse from his friends.
Well, good for him. I mean, I'd be giving him shit too. Sorry, I have to bring the dog up here so he'll stop whining.
No, it's okay. I mean, part of this is just very laid back and no pressure. I live in Manhattan, and the only place I could record is right next to a window. And at some point, there's going to be sirens, an explosion, something. There's always some insanity during these things.
True.
So if I go completely mute for a second, that's why I'm trying to save people's ears from the noise and the racket. But
you're good, man.
So you said you were a professional wrestler. Like, could you talk a little bit about that? Because that's pretty awesome. I've only met a few people who wrestled in my life.
Yeah, so basically after the last band I was in, kind of like we always had problems with like keeping a drummer, and we got really
Yeah,
close to being on a
join the club.
reality. Yeah, yeah, I see you play guitar. That's what I play too. I was guitar and I sang, and man, after we got really close to being on a reality show for Fuse, back in like 2007, I think it was, and like our drummer, dude, he was I've never he's never been more offbeat. I don't think anybody has in that night. And it was like the final round of this competition. And the winners from that night were going to be on this Fuse reality show. And he was really nervous. He started playing like, oh, I guess he's getting down now. Okay. Well, short-lived. He started playing the chorus from one song in the middle of a verse or another. So anyways, so we're like, let's take a break, AKA let's break up. And so my buddy and I, who was the bassist, we loved professional wrestling. And the two things we wanted to do was be in a band or professional wrestlers growing up. So we're like, well, fuck it. Let's try and be professional wrestlers. The Dudley Boys had just opened up a school in Orlando, in Kissimmee specifically. So we went to Kissimmee, and that was it wasn't a bad decision, but I also don't recommend it. Like, I'm really glad I did it. But anytime like you get a lot of kids that ask you, like, or even teenagers at shows, like, hey, how do I become a wrestler? I always just tell them, just don't. It's stupid.
Oh, I mean, anything like that, right? Anything that's not a basic 9-to-5 job is something that you're going to have to work 10 times harder to get, and it's thankless, and you're not going to make as much money. I mean, it's like... So yeah, I think a lot of people with all of the arts, actually, whether it's the music, wrestling, I guess, that's kind of the end story. Is unless you love it, don't do it. But
yeah, and starting off wrestling as an independent wrestler, it's a lot like being in a local band. When you first start out, nobody wants to book you, and then fine, we'll book you, but we don't want to pay you, or what they pay you, it's like they might as well not be paying you. Then you got to slowly build up your reputation. Okay, people start asking for you, and then now you can charge a little more. Now you can play or wrestle at a better venue. Blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot of parallels, except that now you're more relying on yourself. I mean, certainly you have to rely on your opponent and that kind of stuff, but at least, you don't have to worry about a drummer like screwing up your whole band or something.
Having a full meltdown and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, did the amount of dirtbaggery that's in the music business happen with wrestling? Because I remember it was brutal. And like, I guess for lack of a better word, I am a raging asshole when it comes to stuff like that. Like, I say hi to everybody. I always try to have a smile on my face until I smell that you're trying to screw me over. And then there's just zero patience. There was a couple of times where the last band I was in, the singer had to and she was like 5 feet tall. She had to step between me and be like, hey guys, just continue the conversation because she saw my face getting, dark red, yeah, it bothers me. And it bothers me twice as much because when you do what you love like that and you're trying to work on it, you see some people around you taking money from those people that now they have even less than what they should have had to begin with. So,
yeah, man, you met a lot of the same people in terms of like personalities and egos, and a lot of people that thought they were better than they should be. And wrestling, it's more like, it's weird. Like, it's not real. Like, nobody really wins or loses their match, right? It's predetermined. But some guys get really concerned about whether or not they're I've lost 3 weeks in a row and blah, blah, blah. Like, dude, like, what do you care? Like, it's so crazy. And you meet these guys, like adult grown men, sometimes in their 40s still doing it on the independent scene. And they're like upset about their place on the card. Like,
yeah, also similar to the music business.
It's crazy, man. Like YouTube, the retro gaming community, at least on YouTube, is a lot more level-headed. The average IQ seems to be much higher, and people are just more level-headed and realistic. I mean, so far I haven't really met anybody that's a jerk or anything like that. Even like the really big YouTubers, like like the Norms of the world and that kind of stuff.
You've gotten very lucky because I've had a wildly different experience. And I know I've never fit in anywhere in my life. I'm sure that I'm just not that likable. But my introduction to you was pretty similar to everybody else's. I walked up, said hello, introduced myself, and I cannot tell you how many people who definitely know who I am because they've used a lot of my work on my website before would just turn their back back to me or be
Really?
like, oh yeah, well just email me and I'll see if I have time, or just really awful. So that's why I was like, no offense whatsoever, but I was very happily surprised when you were very friendly and welcoming. I was like, dude, his videos are great and he's nice. Like, sweet.
Well, you have to understand, I wasn't expecting like when I got asked to do Retro World Expo, I was kind of hesitant to do it. Not because I think I'm some big time YouTuber, but the opposite. Because I was like, I don't think anyone's gonna go there to see me. I think no one's gonna attend my panel. Obviously, like, I mean, I didn't get the kind of attention that, you know, like My Life in Gaming or a gaming historian would, nor should I. But I was like really surprised. So, you want to? Anytime somebody wanted to talk to, I was like, yes, please, hello.
Yeah, it's a really great feeling. I always. Sometimes it's harder for me to take compliments than it is to take insults. Like if somebody's like, "Yeah, man, you kind of suck," I'd be like, "Yeah, I do, but I like it." But like when people say nice things, sometimes I just don't know. Like it's very uncomfortable for me. Not in a disrespectful way, but I do really enjoy knowing that people appreciate the work you put in. So that is very cool. And it's funny that you mentioned like realistic YouTubers, because that is one thing that I definitely found, is that your average person doing videos in the retro gaming scene have realistic expectations of things. You know, they know everybody would love to do it for a living, but they all realize it's a cool hobby that they have, and that is kind of a little bit refreshing to be around that rather than the opposite. So, and I didn't get that very often. I was in a gig one time with a bunch of people that were older, and they'd played the same 10 bars on Long Island that they've been playing since they were 17, and they're in their late 40s. And one guy has this attitude of like, dude, some of my friends golf, that's how they spend their money, that's how I spend my money. I'm never going to be a rock star, but I love this so much, and that's always what I want to do. And it's like, I want to hug that guy. And then you have the same type of, the same person grew up in the same area that thinks that day is going to be the day that he's discovered and get whisked off to be a rock star. Today's my day, and everything has to be perfect. And
there is a lot of that. It's funny that you. So I laugh because at one point YouTube and kind of like where my channel started to grow a lot was, for whatever reason, it started really promoting a video I did on Game Genie, and this is maybe like 6 months after I had done it, just randomly. It just started happening. It was getting like literally like thousands of views every hour, and I'd laugh because I told my girlfriend, like, this is it. This is the day. I'm gonna be a professional YouTuber now. Nah, didn't happen.
Yeah.
But after a few days of that, I'm like, this probably is gonna drop off shortly, and sure enough, it did.
Did you ever find out where you got the boost from?
I mean, it's literally just YouTube recommending the video. Like it actually went on for more than a few weeks. I think maybe like a month and a half, where you can see like your views in the last 60 minutes or whatever. It was literally like not less than 500, and usually like over 1,000 for like a month and a half.
Wow.
It was obscene. It was great. It was also only like my 6th video. Oh, hold on, he goes. So it was also only like my 6th or 7th video, something like that. So I didn't have a big library. So even though, like, according to analytics, people liked it, you can see your likes and all that kind of crap. Like, there was no catalog for them to stick around for. So, I mean, I got a lot of subs out of it, but not the amount you would think for the amount of views. So I think I snagged maybe like 8,000, which I'm not complaining. I mean, 8,000 subs in like a month and a half, I'd kill for that now.
Yeah, I worked two and a half years to get my 8,000 or so.
And I'm over here like complaining about it almost. But yeah, man, I wish it would have happened a little later when I had like more of a catalog and stuff, because I think I know I'm guilty of going to a channel, even if I find a video that I like on a channel and I see they've got like 4 other videos, I'm like, I'm not going to be as apt to subscribe.
Out of curiosity, then, how would you feel about rolling up to a channel with like 200 videos, and then like, are you more or less apt to subscribe to that then?
I'm definitely more likely to. I mean, I'll kind of. It happened when I found LGR's channel. He's got like 700 videos or something real crazy like that. But I watched like a video of his, and I watched like the next one that got recommended. I was like, oh, let me take a look at this guy's channel, and it was like like a sea of like channels on like awesome old PC games and all kinds of stuff. So I immediately subbed. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be like months and months of content. So I don't know. I'm more apt to do it unless like I see that like your other 200 videos are, I don't know, unrelated stuff, or I don't know,
Spoken word
Fortnite.
porn video games.
Yeah. Visual novel games about golden showers, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't. The only reason I asked that is because the other day I stumbled across a channel a buddy of mine recommended called Ancient Architects, not Ancient Aliens, Ancient Architects, and they put out like 6 videos a week, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to have to deal with that every time I fire up my YouTube app, but you know, they're pretty good, so whatever.
Man, 6 a week. That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, a lot of are like, you know, 5-minute things, and it's just talking over still pictures, so it is infinitely easier to do than what we do. So
yeah, sure.
So how did you how did you approach your first video then? Did you just gather information online and then decide to speak over it, or you know, what were your thoughts going into it really with the Bleem thing? Had you ever done anything like that before?
I mean, I wouldn't say I've done something like that before per se, but I mean, so at my job, I mean, I do have to put like a lot of presentations together at my job. So, and my day job, I'm a business analyst or a data scientist or whatever. So I'm used to having to get information from a lot of different sources, piece it together, corroborate, you know, one thing to another, you know, and kind of weave a story about you know, whatever it is, if I'm making a presentation on it. So even though you know, there's a lot of similarities in that. So I was used to organizing data. I'm used to keeping a thread. Yeah, I'm used to like taking notes all the time. So it really was pretty easy to do the research. I corroborated basically everything with 2 to 3 sources. If there was something I couldn't get a secondary or third source on, I just wouldn't include it, which is still what I've done now, and it really. It's amazing how many people don't do that, which is just like,
yeah,
like you're going to get called out on it. Like, it's mind blowing to me that people don't do that. Like, somebody out there will know if it's true or not, and they will let you know, you know? But yeah, that's just how I approached it. And then like watching it back now, I mean, there's definitely things I would change. I'm sure there's things you would change, you know, too, you know, about your first stuff that you've done. So, I mean, I think it's a little dry, and I think, I talk really slow.
I wouldn't call it dry. I certainly wouldn't describe it as dry, but we're all overly critical of the own things that we do. So,
and I didn't know what I was doing with the editing. Like, well, I mean, I knew what I was doing as far as like, I didn't know how to make it visually interesting. Is what I would say. You know, everything that I put up is. I try to make sure everything is relevant to, you know, whatever I'm speaking about, because I see so many videos where it's just like they're talking about topic X and they're showing footage of game Z, and I'm just like, what? This has nothing to do with it, or, you know, that kind of stuff. So I just tried to make everything relevant to whatever I was speaking to and have it flow into the next thing and that kind of stuff. And now I spend a lot more time worrying about, okay, how visually appealing is this going to be? How interesting is this going to be? Because a lot of the topics I have, you know, there isn't video footage that I can use of, and I don't want to just have like a 20-minute video where like 18 minutes of it is gameplay footage. Nothing wrong with that, but I mean, a lot of people do it, so it wouldn't keep my interest, is the way I look at it. So, you know, so it's like, okay, well, how can I make these our magazine articles visually interesting? You know?
Yeah. See, so for me, with stuff like that, like, it's not like I wouldn't find it interesting, but if I get 3 or 4 minutes into a video and it's just game footage of somebody talking, I might do something like turn up the volume and go work on a project while listening, and then miss all the other stuff that comes up on screen afterwards. So that's a good point. That's a good point about doing that. But
yeah, man, and I just always try to like, and I don't. A lot of people don't do this. Like And it's not like I'm some genius or anything for thinking of this, because I'm sure I'm not the first one that thought of it. But if I'm talking about something that GamePro said or whatever, like, I love reading like old GamePros, old EGMs. Like, sometimes I'll just go on archive.org or whatever and just start reading through them just to like pass the time. Like, I fucking love it. So if I was me, I would want to see this fucking article that Sushi X wrote or whatever, you know?
Totally agree.
So yeah, man. So I always try to show the cover, because like that always takes me back, and then go to the page and whatever, maybe show a little bit of it. You know, I mean, there's like so many things that I don't know. I do that. I'm just like, okay, how can I keep this from being monotonous and just make it visually appealing? But this was not your question at all, by the way. But
no, you're this is the answer I wanted, though. So.
But yeah, man, I just so the Bleem thing, yeah, I just kind of gathered from, like I said, as many sources as I could, corroborated stuff. I found a like an online like the ISO for it. So then I burned it and I played with it a little bit because I wanted to like kind of actually know what I'm talking about, you know, from a firsthand experience, you know. And that was pretty much it.
That's awesome. You know, the data scientist, business analyst thing, that explains why you're not completely overwhelmed when you have all of those things and all the topics and trying to rearrange and put them in. Because I think whenever I have a video that, and remind you, as far as I am as amateur as you can get, but whenever I have a video that I know is going to be overwhelming like that, I will shoot and edit all at the same time. So I'll be doing my spoken parts, and then I'll go back and, you know, if there's a 2-minute section of me talking, I'll put stuff over that, you know, save it in Premiere, then go to the next. Because if I drew it all out in a spreadsheet or something, I'd get to line number, you know, like 950 and be like, fuck this, I'm out. I want to go do another soldering video. Let somebody else do this. So.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, like, so generally, I'll do my research and kind of take a bunch of notes. And then between my notes and like the actual sources, then I'll go and start writing the script for it or whatever. Once I have the script, I'll do the voiceover. And when I'm doing the voiceover and I start like editing it is actually when and I'm not in a lot of my videos. I'm starting to put myself more in them, but that's when I kind of decide, okay, this is the section that I'm going to be on camera for. And in Premiere, I'll just put like a picture of me, you know, for that like period in the timeline or whatever. And then I'll go back and film. But that's crazy that you shoot and edit at the same time. I don't think I could do that.
See, everybody's brain works different, right? Like whenever I used to sit in the classroom and the teacher would talk at me, it would all just bounce off my big head, and then I would go do whatever we were talking about, and I would learn it right away. So I got to do things in order to grasp it. I can't. Like every time I've tried to write my own script, I'll do outlines, but like every time I've tried to write my own script, it sounds like I'm badly rehearsing something in front of a camera. Whereas, and it takes forever. Whereas if I were to just do 10 takes of something, one of them is probably going to be decent enough, and you know, just maybe edit. But the one thing I try to never ever do, which you obviously don't do in yours, is the people that will they probably say the same thing 10 times like me, but rather than wait for a take start to finish, they cut their videos up almost like they were doing an audio recording. So it's like, hi, and then I was thinking of the thing that it gets me dizzy. I will shut that right off. I can't watch it. I'll get motion sick by the end of it.
Yeah, so. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that either. I think you can like do that very sparingly.
Yeah.
And you have to do it in a way that it comes off like you did it as a stylistic choice, not I screwed up, you know, because there's a guy,
Technology Connections. He does it, and I'm convinced at least half of them he does on purpose, like just as a style, maybe almost to plan ahead. Maybe he plans on doing it so that when he has to cut his mistakes, it just feels like, you know, but he's great at that. There's a few people that could pull it off, but I am not one of them. So,
but like when you see a guy who's just talking like this and suddenly there's a sharp cut to this the next word and there was no reason like in what he was saying for like a weird cut, like there's a guy I've watched who like he'll do it but then he'll change like so he's got like a light, I cannot remember this guy's name, Wang. So he has like a light in the back, like, up against his wall. What he'll do, like if he's like talking about two different points of view on something, he'll like switch it when he's talking about the other one or whatever, and the lighting will change in the back, and he'll come back to the other one. So there's like, and you know, it wouldn't surprise me if he's doing it partly because he's doing it in multiple takes, but at least he like does it in a way and cuts it at parts where it makes sense and it comes off like it was done as stylistic. But yeah, man, I try to just sit there and just do it, even if I have to do like 20 takes to get one that's like good, correct, seems like I'm not trying to read it off, you know, something. I'll just sit there. I've spent like an hour sometimes doing like a 2-minute thing, you know.
Oh yeah. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten to the end of like a 5-minute segment and it's take 50 and I've nailed it. I have everything in my head and I'll be like, so that concludes my and there's like a horn right outside. I'm like, open the window, like, I fucking hate you.
Oh, that sucks. It's not even in your control. That's the worst. That's the worst. Yeah, man, that's awful.
So what kind of setup do you use when you record? Obviously you have the green screen back there, but what kind of, I mean, I could see the mic right here. What kind of mic is that, and what cameras do you use? Because your stuff's all really high quality.
It's thank you, by the way. It's an Electro Voice RE20. For the mic. Usually I do have a pop filter. I'm not an animal, but I didn't set it up because I'm an asshole.
Yeah.
But I use this for basically all my voiceover stuff. I don't think you can see it, but well, no, because I don't have it connected. I have a boom mic that I use for my live shots, and that is an audio. I think it's an Audio Technica. I can't remember. I don't remember it because I ended up buying the one that I did because Gaming Historian did a video on. I think when he hit 100,000 subs, or maybe it was just no, it was like his what I plan on doing this year in 2017 video, something like that. Anyways, he mentioned that he had just gotten a boom mic to improve his on-camera audio, and I noticed it was better, and he listed which mic it was, so then I just bought that one. But I use that for the live stuff. Dude, for my on-camera stuff, the little bits I did, I was using the same webcam you're looking at now.
Oh, really?
I have something better now, but up until the video that I'm working on right now, the XBAND video, like, where I got a real camera, I bought like this, because, you know, webcam USB cords are notoriously short. I bought like a special USB cord that puts out like extra power so that I could extend the range on it. And I literally just had it on a stand, like if it was a real camera. And it sucked though, because sometimes it was like out of focus and you can't really do much about it. So I'd have to like digitally like refocus it like afterwards. So anyways, now I use a Canon T6. So nothing too fancy, but you know, it's definitely much better quality. Best Buy was running a sale on them for like $350 a couple weeks ago. So they're usually, and it came with like 2 lenses.
Oh,
so
wow.
it was a really good deal. But that's about it, man. My PC's an Asus I've had for like 5 years. It's an i7. Like the graphics card on it sucks. It's like a 680 or something. It's like really outdated now. But it's got a shit ton of RAM. It's got a nice CPU, so I mean it's pretty speedy for video editing.
Yeah, as long as it gets it done, right?
Yeah.
It's funny that's I bet you that's, whether you realize it or not, I bet you that's a musician's trick. When you talked about listening to YouTubers talk about what they use after you've already seen their proven videos, it reminds me of those. I don't know. In car racing, they used to call them barstool racers. I'm not sure what they call them for musicians, but you still see all those people on the forums argue to death over gear and argue what's the best gear and the best amp. And some of these people have never played a live gig in their life, and they're arguing over what the best live gear is. So that was the same thing for me. I'd always go through the musicians that were 1 or 2 steps ahead of me, and the ones that sounded good, I would ask what they used. So that's why... you know, for me, being in such a noisy place, I can't use what most people would use. I'd have to soundproof the room or shoot in a closet, which I tried, by the way. It wouldn't work. It wasn't enough depth for the video. So I ended up talking to John Linneman from Digital Foundry, and he told me about the Rode, oh man, I'll remember it. Smart Lab, I think it's called.
Oh, dude, this thing?
Yeah, that's it. That is exactly it.
I got a beef with this, but after you're done telling me your story.
Well, the reason I settled on it is because it's expensive. You got to buy this, you know, the adapter for it because it's a TRSS mic. And I tried a bunch of other much cheaper mics, but all of them picked up all the noise around me, and this is the only one that I could do because I do a lot of any of the in-person interviews. I have to bring a backpack of crap with me, so it's perfect. A bunch of little ones, and it was the best to cut out all the extra frequency. So if it were up to me, I'd be shooting in a soundproofed room, and you know, with a green screen. My background would be a fake video, wouldn't be real, but I got to work with what I have. So yeah, that's what I chose, and it was perfect for what I've been doing. But what's your beef with it? I'm curious.
So. Okay, my beef is, I guess, more so with me for not reading up on it enough. But I was a little disappointed with it because I can't use it because it doesn't work with. It works with like all iPhones, but it doesn't work with some Android phones, but not with my particular Android phone.
Really?
And yeah, and even like the list of Android phones that it works on, I mean, it's pretty slim and it's not made very clear, like that you have to have like very specific Android phones for it, so I can't use it. So I was disappointed because I have a buddy that uses it and it sounds awesome.
Yeah, that's a stupid question, but did you try the adapter, the little $10 adapter they sell?
I didn't know that they made an adapter for it, so maybe I need to.
Yeah, let me see here. I got my travel bag for my Amazon thing for when I go. And the thing that I did was so I use whenever I'm on the road, I use these Tascam when I was one of these, but because the Smart Lav has the the 3-prong, the TRSS. I'm not sure if it'll get in focus in the video. You got to use this little adapter thing that just turns it into a regular microphone input.
Oh my God. Okay, yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
So that's why I said it's almost $100 because you got to buy this and you have to buy this. But as soon as I bought this thing, it started working in everything. And supposedly a lot of the equipment I was using was compatible with TRSS, but until you got that adapter, it didn't work at all. So that's what I'm using in this.
So I need to go TRRS to TRS.
TRRS, yeah. All these damn acronyms.
But, okay, yeah. Here's one right here on Amazon. Let me just. I'm sorry. I'm just adding this to my cart real quick, because otherwise I'll forget about it.
The people that are in this just to watch YouTube videos are like, will you guys stop talking about mics? And everybody that makes their own YouTube videos are like, no, keep talking about mics. Like,
dude, this is crazy. I can't believe I didn't know about this. Okay, well, thanks, man.
Yeah, no problem. One of my upcoming videos is I'm going to do a whole thing on how I shoot, because my first couple of podcasts were garbage compared to now. But the thing that I'm super, super proud of is that every one of these, like, here's how to make a podcast videos on YouTube, it always ends in, and that only cost $4,000. And if you buy used equipment, you could make it look and sound exactly like this for under $1,000. So I'm very proud of that. So anybody could throw money at a problem to solve it, but I like being a creative nerd. So.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate of used equipment. In fact, this camera that I ended up getting, I was gonna buy a used one on eBay, and there literally just happened to be, so they were running the deal I told you about, and it was also like had been returned, and the box was still sealed. The person just returned it, and they charged like a restocking fee, and they discounted it by X amount. So I was like, shit, this is gonna be brand new, and it's gonna be a little bit cheaper than buying it used. So
yeah, love it. So when you have to get all of your sources, then, so you talked about your equipment and how you get you on camera and your audio. Do you just find all of these? I mean, I see that you've used some video clips, but what about all of the still images that you get? Do you have to just search through archive.org? Do you go through and?
Yeah, sometimes archive.org. Sometimes it'll be something that I've scanned. Sometimes I'll actually, like on my XBAND video, I got Jimmy actually hop out to scan a couple Saturn magazines for me, because there's not a lot of stuff on the Japanese version of the XBAND out there. So it depends on the video, man. Like the Game Shark video, I had to go to a real library because the news, thankfully, like they ended up getting, for a time, I don't want to bore people with the details, but a company that was involved with the company doing the Game Shark was based out of Lake Mary, and which is about 1.5 to 2 hours depending on traffic from where I live. And I needed like this article. There was only like the tiniest little clip of it online, and I'm like, I need this data. So I found like a library that had like the archive. So I just went there, got it, scanned it. So it just really depends, man. I have a subscription to like a newspaper archive service that I just pay yearly for. So I can usually find like better quality newspaper clippings from there. I get it from lots of places. I mean, obviously from like the magazines that we talked about. A lot of people don't realize that like Billboard covered a lot of, in the 90s and the early 2000s, they covered a ton of stuff related to like video gaming and tech.
Really?
Like a lot. Yeah, like it's crazy. The earliest article I found about the XBAND was in a Billboard magazine. And it was so early in its life that it still hadn't even been named the XBAND. They just call it like the catapult modem. So I go through like Billboard magazines all the time. Popular Science is another one that covers video game stuff that a lot of people don't think of. So I go through those, but usually it's a combination of like magazines, articles. The New York Times from the 90s and 2000s, they have a lot of like stuff covering like the Philips CDi, man. I found like shit ton of articles about the CDi. Digital Pictures actually. They did like 3 or 4 stories on them in one year. Why? I don't know. But Tom Zito is quoted in every one.
So it's funny because I could have a strong guess on why the digital pictures won, because at the time that was the first time you could really use people in the video game. So that was, I get the fascination that people had with it, but the CDI, I'm still to this day fascinated by their marketing team. I remember being a little kid and, a jaded little nerd who could usually pick out, like, when the 32X was announced, I remember my cousin Scott and I both being like, oh, this is going to suck. So, like, when the CDI was announced, like, wow, we could play, like, live action Zelda with, like, real people? That's going to be the coolest Zelda game ever. Like, their marketing was awesome. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I see what you're saying about the digital pictures thing, but, like, they weren't. I mean, those digital pictures games. I mean, they sold. Oh, I don't want to say they didn't sell well, because I mean, we also have to keep in mind the amount of Sega CDs that were even out there. So I mean, they sold well when you compare their sales numbers compared to like the amount of units of Sega CDs sold. But really, it's not like New York Times like treated them like they were like the next big thing in the first few articles, and then the last articles are like, hey, what's going on with these FMV games? No one seems to really like them. And poor Tom Zito's, they're the future.
Man, I was fascinated by those when it came out. I was a little kid and I got Tomcat Alley, because I always wanted to be a pilot. It wasn't until I was like 15 that my neighbor was an Army recruiter, and he's like, dude, you're colorblind. They won't let you near the plane. Like, they won't even let you pump gas into the plane. You might mop something that a pilot walks by, but you're not, like, your pilot dreams, forget them. Be realistic. The recruiters will tell you could be Tom Cruise in Top Gun, but you're done. Forget it. So playing that game was pretty awesome. Well, the thought of playing that game. Right. And then you're sitting there and you have to use a D-pad to move the cursor around, when that really would have been a great light gun game. But how are they going to, they can't really flash the screen on an FMV game for that. And it's just, I wanted to like it so bad. You can't even fly the plane. How many people realize that a game about flying an airplane, you can't fly the plane? So
I mean, the cool thing about Tomcat Alley, though, I think it was the first Sega CD game that had like the full screen video. So it's got that going for it. So like that was a nice novelty, but you're right though, because after like I remember when we got that game, or my neighbor got the game, I thought it was the coolest thing for like 20 minutes.
Yep.
And then after I'm like, oh. And it doesn't have a lot of like different clips either. You see the same clips or like start to repeat after about 20 minutes, just a bit of a letdown. But even to this day, I love FMV games. I don't know what it is about them. I don't know if they're trying to be like something, like they're trying so desperately to like overachieve. And like very few do, but I don't know. There's a certain novelty about them, and I don't know. Like every once in a while, like I'll find one where they did something really interesting. Like on the CDI, there's the Thunder in Paradise shooter game is like really, really well done. It's different every time you play it. It never stops at the same locations. It's not, you know how the American laser games, it's always the same people come out in the same order, Well, in the Thunder in Paradise game, not only does the roving camera stop in different locations every time, but the amount of enemies that come out, where they come out, what those enemies do when they come out. You can have multiple on screen at a time. You can choose what order to shoot them in. So you have to like strategize a little bit, depending on where it stops. Like I've played this game and embarrassingly at least 25 times all the way through the last 6 months, and every time there's like new stuff, there's new video clips, there's new sequences. It's like, oh shit, we've never stopped here. Well, last time I was playing it, a guy, there's a part where you stop and there's these cars, you're in an alley and there's these cars and there's a van, and a guy he was like crawling under the van and came out to shoot me. I've never seen that in the game at all after playing it, over two dozen times. So,
wow.
Anyways, I don't know, man. I love FMV games. The worse, the better, in my opinion, usually. But every once in a while, there'll be a gem like Thunder in Paradise.
I think, I don't know if you would call it an FMV game, but I, as a kid, loved Seventh Guest. And when I went back to play it, I mean, it's probably 10 years ago now, but I thought it really held up. I mean, you have to know what you're getting into. You cannot expect a PS4 game, but I thought it was great. But I don't know if you would consider that FMV, because it really just had cutscenes in it with, different...
Right. I mean, it's FMV, you're right, but it doesn't really feel like an FMV game.
Yeah. Yeah, but the Thunder in Paradise, you said? Is that only on CDI?
It's the only console powerful enough to bring it to you. I'm sorry, Dave. Is there a frog in your throat?
Oh shit! No, I don't think I've played that one. I had a few different CDIs. I figured out some RGB mods on a couple of them, and I just the weirder console, the better for me when it comes to that stuff. It would just made me giggle when I could, get high quality output out of a CDI. It's the ultimate oxymoron.
So my CDI, I don't know what you mean by that, sir. But my CDI, like I'm scared to mod it because I don't want to break it. But I find so I live stream the CDI a lot, and constantly people are asking me if I've RGB modded it or if I'm using the S video out, and I'm just running AV out of it because that's just easier for my setup to live stream it. I think the video looks it depends on the game, to be fair. Like Thunder in Paradise, it looks near DVD quality, the video that comes out of it. Now there's some other games like there's something at the Midway, I can't remember the video on that. It's awful. It's atrocious. So it just depends. But I can't now that we're talking about the CDI, can we talk about your article about the CDI on your website? I don't know how could you say that it's one of the worst consoles. How is it that you put it? I can't remember what I'm gonna look this up. Something about like, it's
best
almost
quality
XYZ.
video off the worst quality console.
Yeah,
or
something like that.
So one of my first interviews was Sean Green, who created the Bliss Box, which is a thing that you could take any console or any controller from any console and play it on any device that supports USB. So everything from a PC to PS3, Raspberry Pi, whatever. And the only console he won't support is the CDI, because the controller input is pulled at I think he said it was 18 to 30 milliseconds. So whereas your average game console from Atari all the way up to now, mostly now, takes about 1 frame to process an input. And because of the way the CDI is made, it could take up to 3 frames. So it's almost like a laggy console right out the door.
Well, listen, I think what he doesn't realize is that to me just says that it's a console for hardcore gamers, and if he can't handle it, and he doesn't want to admit it, that's on him, I suppose. But that's something he needs to come to terms with.
It had so much potential. I do also remember being 12 years old and seeing that game Voyeur. And just thinking porn and video games at the same time, it doesn't get any better than this. And then
I was trying to find. I try to find. If I see an actual CDI game, I'll buy it. But I have a lot of ones that I just burned myself because I want to play them, and it's not easy to find them out in the wild. So I was looking for this game called Girls Club, which is basically like Dream Phone, like the board game, but on the CDI. It has FMV, and I'm like, oh, this looks terrible. This will be, fun to play as a, for a rib, when live streaming. Anyways, so I downloaded what I thought was this game, and then I turned it on. It was just porn. It was just CDI porn. But thankfully, I hadn't started to stream. I tested the disc, but
so was that actually sold back in the day, or is that something that somebody just made for the heck of it, or?
Because CDI games and menus they run the gamut from looking like absolute shit to really professionally done. I can't tell if this is it doesn't look that good, like the menu system or whatever, but the video quality and the picture quality is really good. So, but I mean, I guess they got the important stuff right. But so on your website, what you would wrote is what I have it right here. Oh no, did you take this off? Somebody
might have screenshotted a tweet that I had put. I think that you had posted a tweet.
No. I screenshotted it from the. I think I did it on the mic. Okay, I think it was on the guide.
Maybe. Yeah, that was probably it. That makes more sense.
Okay, here it is. Conclusion: the CDI is pretty much the worst console ever made, but at least you can enjoy, in quotes, in RGB. You son of a bitch.
Well, the one thing I have to say to that is, regardless of anyone's opinion of any console, it's been really bugging me lately when I see people just drill huge holes in the back to mount whatever mod that they've put. And it especially bugs me because in the mid-2000s, I saw a lot of people AV mod some consoles and just, now there's just massive holes in it where there's a nice little port. on the CDi, you could desolder the RF jack and then mount a just one circular connector right there. So if you ever wanted to, you could RGB mod it or put it right back to stock without ever hurting it at all. So regardless of your opinion on the console, if you ever wanted to RGB mod it, you could do so knowing that you don't have to cut a chunk out of your console. It'll look totally stock.
The CDi, man, thinking ahead, thinking ahead. Just another wonderful feature brought to you by Philips.
There you go.
One day I'll get you on one of my CDi live streams and
just
I'll convert you to the
or
cult.
text me or something, and I will absolutely jump on.
I'll convert you to the cult. Don't worry.
I'll crack open a beer, sit on my couch, and just laugh my ass off.
I'll show you the 10 good games on it, and you will be blown away.
There's 10?
Oh, there's more than that, man. Have you ever played Chaos Control on PS1?
No, I think I played it on. Was that the one that's 32X CD?
I don't think so. I don't think they had it on the 32X, but anyways, the definitive version is on the Philips CDi. I can tell you that.
Okay. You know, now is that the one with like the Jamaican guy in it at the beginning?
No. Chaos Control is like a
no, that's
shooter.
Crypt Keeper or Corpse Killer. Corpse Killer is what I'm thinking of. Right.
Yeah. No. Chaos Control is like an on-rail shooter, like an FMV on-rail shooter. And you know the one thing that the CDi does do really well is full motion video. And if you have the CDi mouse, which I do have, it's really good to play. And you know, I mean, as long as you're good enough to deal with 3 frames lag, some people aren't. It's okay.
You know, I was always impressed that they had the keyboard and mouse for it. And I know the keyboard was for whatever, like, encyclopedia thing, but I think you can use it with 7th Guest, and their version of 7th Guest does look quite good. So I had a complete set of like, the good controller, the one that kind of sort of felt like a Sega Genesis controller with 3 buttons. I had one of those, the mouse, the keyboard, the you know, nice RGB mod, and I ended up getting that to Mike Matei, and I told him you have to do a live stream of one of the, like, 7th Guest or something where you use the mouse. So I don't think he's gotten to that yet.
No, he live streamed I know, like, the Zelda games a couple times. But it's okay, man. Like, I'm kind of glad that, like, he hasn't, because I don't need the prices on CDIs or the games going up. So
the Zelda games are through the roof, though, if you ever want those. But
every once in a while, like, there'll be one cheap because somebody doesn't know what it is. But yeah, dude, you're usually looking at a couple $100 at least.
Yeah, and those are, I mean, you can't argue that those are good games.
No, you can't. They're honestly, the Zelda games are the 3 worst games I've played on the CDI.
Yeah, I have to agree on that one. That is just, it was so disappointing too, man. I think, weren't they the only video game company since the original Nintendo's inception to have any opportunity to do anything with Nintendo's IP?
As far as I know, on a console, yeah.
Yeah, on a console. I mean, obviously, there's toys and stuff that people make.
Yeah, and there's been a couple, like, educational PC things here and there, but as far as I can, I'm sure someone will be chiming in, no, that's not true. But certainly at that time, you know, nobody else was getting to do that. But Hotel Mario is pretty well done. It's not a good Mario game because, I don't know, it's weird. It feels like a Mario Party game or something, right? Like one of the party games or something.
Yeah.
But like a really long one. So it's not a good traditional Mario game, but as far as like a puzzle platformer, it's really good and really challenging.
Yeah, you know, I think that was kind of I mean, if the CDi if the whole thing could have been approached differently, a lot would have been different. But I think using the Mario name for that game, at that time when you hear Mario, you expect run from left to right, jump up and down, go through some pipes. You don't expect what they brought, but it wasn't a bad game, certainly.
Yeah. Did you ever? And I don't want to. This will be the last game of the CDi because I don't want to bore people to death about the CDi. But did you ever get to play the demo or the prototype for like the other Mario game they were making for the CDi that was like a direct sequel? Like, I think like that one surprisingly controls really, really well.
Yeah, but that's easy to say when the enemies don't do any damage. You know, you're just running left and right, and you know.
Fair, but
I mean, it could have been the greatest game. It could have been the greatest Mario game. It could have not. It's just, it was a. In the state that it's in, it's very cool to see, but you can't judge anything by it just because of like, there's just, it doesn't, or it's just unfinished, you know?
So I guess the reason what I'm maybe it's more surprising to me than impressive, but when you play the Zelda games on the CDI, those are 2D platformer-ish kind of games. You do a lot of jumping and this and that. But they're like slow, right? Like you scroll very slowly. Everything feels very janky. It feels like you like barely have control of Link or Zelda. Whereas like the Mario game, it controlled very similarly to how he controls in Hotel Mario, which controls pretty well. And there you are dealing with enemies. So,
So, all right, I see where you're getting at with this, and yeah, I agree 100%.
But you're right. I mean, the enemies aren't attacking you there. You're not. It's not the full game. It's so it is hard to tell like with everything how it would have done. I mean, they could have royally fucked it up.
Well, I mean, since the CDI plays CDRs, anybody that has one of those consoles, I definitely recommend burning a disc and playing it. And that's that's certainly an experience that you don't want to pass up if you already own one of those things. But
yeah, it's a fun 10 minutes.
Yeah, no, honestly, I agree 100%.
Yeah, it's interesting. Visually, it looked good. Like it looked like a Mario game. They got the visual styles right, but who knows? They would have had weird cutscenes, I'm sure. And
So, is the CDI your favorite console?
I wouldn't say it's not. It's the console I've played the most out of the last, definitely in 2018. And I have a Switch, I have a PS4, I have, all kinds of stuff. But like I just love the CDI games, man. They're just so like weird, a lot of them. Like Mutant Rampage Body Slam is a real weird one, where like it's like this post-apocalyptic beat 'em up with like, I don't know, really like I think much more improved animated cutscenes, even though it's the same people that did the ones on Zelda. But the gameplay actually is really done really well for a beat 'em up from that time. It has more variety of enemies than I've ever seen in any beat 'em up of the time. So I don't know, man. It's up there. It's probably my number. It's not my number one of all time, but it's my current number one.
I can just imagine Ken Kutaragi hearing this and just being like, "You motherfucker!" Like, not only is the PS4 better, but that whole thing, you stabbed me in the back. Philips stabbed me in the back, and I make something amazing, and you're still using it.
I'm telling you, dude, the CDI is an underrated. It's an underrated console. I bought it like when I bought it, it's because I was doing a video on the CDI, and much like Bleem, I'm like, well, I want to know what I'm talking about, blah 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 blah. And when I first thing I did was burn the Zelda games. I'm like, oh, this is awful. This is like the worst thing. And I had like the infrared controller initially, which is genuinely one of the worst, if not the worst controller I've ever used. Then I got the Sega style gamepad. I burned some other games, and I was like, oh, this really isn't that bad. And once you start looking, I mean, don't get me wrong, you do have to look, but there are good games on there.
So I do have a little bit of a soft spot for the Jaguar, which is another console that gets crapped on all the time, and part of it's a little weird bit of nostalgia because we had one when I was a kid because my uncle invested in stock in the company, and even like my cousins and I, we were all like, this is a bad idea. This is a bunch of 10-year-olds are telling like a successful man like this is a bad idea. And sure as shit, the stock tanked. So as a joke, he got us the Jaguar for Christmas one year, and a bunch of Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon, which was almost unplayable. The controls were so bad. Yeah. Same thing with Checkered Flag. Although somebody, I think, patched that to make the controls less awful. And then Cybermorph, which is just, it could have been so good.
Yeah, if the draw distance wasn't so bad and it was a little bit faster, I think it would have been okay.
Yeah, so that, that was my memory of the Jaguar. So when I started the website and I was going through and I started to pick up these extra consoles to learn how to, what specs for on each one, how do you build the cables and all that stuff, I picked one up and I borrowed the Skunk board, the ROM cart where you could program one ROM at a time. And I spent just a few minutes with a bunch of games, and I got to Tempest. And my cousin Scott loves Tempest, and he said, oh, you got to get the spinner, you got to get the spinner. So I said, well, whatever. Like, I don't want to spend this extra money, but worst comes to worst, I'll sell it to Scott. He seems to love it so much. So I ordered the custom spinner controller. I played Tempest, and I was like, hey, this is pretty cool. I like this. This is very unexpected. And I looked at the clock, and over an hour had gone by. Like, it's awesome, and there's a bunch of cool stuff, and that's why when I saw your video on it, I had always wondered why, all these years, I'd wondered why it doesn't look 64-bit. It doesn't look so good, and you really like it, because I'd heard the words before, but in your video, you drove home the point perfectly well about how they used the chip that was just designed to be like the crossing guard between the two main Jaguar chips, and most people just programmed right to that. And that's that was it was so depressing to hear.
Yeah. I mean, the Jaguar. I mean, I'm not. I don't know if I consider it 64-bit because it does have a 64-bit data bus and a few other things. I hate that people like think that like Atari called it a 64-bit system because it has two 32-bit chips. Like that's not what was making it quote unquote 64-bit in their eyes. But either way, the games don't even look 32-bit. A lot of them, and it's because of that 68,000, man. The same thing that's in a Genesis.
Yeah.
I think it's the same thing like in an Apple II, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So yeah, people were just familiar with that chip, and they're just like, oh, this is way easier than like, this. People weren't used to programming like, okay, this is a GPU over here, and this is that at that time, especially on a console. Like the Saturn had some similar issues where it had like multiple architectures like that, and it took a while before people started programming well for the Saturn, and well, saw how that all turned out for them. But yeah. Thanks, man. Though I'm glad because the thing with the Jaguar is I like I have a Jaguar too, and I like it. I don't have a lot of good games on it, but that's not because there aren't good games. I just don't own a lot of the good ones. But I like it a lot too. It had so much potential. I actually really like the controller.
I never minded the controller.
I can see how people could look at it and be like, "What the fuck is this?"
Yeah,
but once you hold
clunky, but it doesn't feel clunky.
It's super comfortable. The little number pad is great. Like if you're playing, like Doom or something. So I don't know what people's complaints are with that, but I think people just like go off of AVGN's video, much like the CDi. I think people are just like, oh, it's awful because AVGN said it's awful.
Yeah, that's the one thing. I think even even James himself doesn't kind of get that. Like he could talk about a bad game, and depending on the game, some people get it. It's a joke. You're making fun of it.
It's a character.
It's a character, and other people like when he goes over the top because that's what people like to see. Certainly, what I like to see. Some people take it a little too far, and it is a little weird. So I loved the Jaguar and the CDi videos. I laughed my ass off, but I understood that like he didn't literally mean every single thing about it was crap.
Right. He can't just sit there and be like, yeah, some of the games were okay.
Yeah. It would defeat the purpose of his video. So yeah, keep being the nerd, keep going crazy. But
yeah. You know what's funny, man, is I get a lot of my Jaguar video, a lot of its views come from recommendations after people watch his Jaguar video. And so a lot of the comments on my video are like, oh, I just came in from AVGN. I thought this thing was a piece of trash. like, nah. I mean, there's some shit games on it, but what console doesn't have shit games?
Oh, of course.
They all do.
Yeah.
They all do.
And the bigger or the more popular the console, the more games, therefore the more great games and the more shitty games. So
Exactly.
That's funny that you said a lot of people came to your video after his, because I don't know if you've ever had this happen more than just that, but I've had a few people, because I guess there's a guy that, it's a chubby white dude with a beard, talks about video games, doesn't have the greatest camera, so it matched the look of mine perfectly for like a year. But I focus on either technical stuff or just, bullshitting the lines in between, if you will. And he was one of those people that started out as just like, here's my opinion on the games that I like, which I have zero problems with whatsoever. But then he started to talk about some technical stuff. And when I say he got it wrong, it's like water is dry, the sun is cold type of wrong. And people would come right from, I would be the next recommendation. And I had so many people asking me stuff. And I'm like, I didn't know who the guy was. I'd never heard of him. It was funny and weird, and then it wasn't funny at all anymore because I have all these people like ready to fight me in the comments because I'm like, that's actually not true at all. Water is definitely not dry; it is wet. So that did that happen to you a lot with any of the videos that you got?
Not really. So when I first started out, I would definitely get more. I would get people that would be like, if I found out some information that maybe wasn't out there before or that contradicted like I can't think of anything right now, but what most people thought something was, people be like, oh, you're wrong because blah blah. I'd be like, well, hey, if you have a source, like I don't want to be like I'm fine with correcting a video or whatever. Like just give me a source because I've got 2 or 3, for everything I put in my video. So I mean, occasionally I would get some of that. One time somebody on my Game Genie video commented something like, it was either Game Genie or Power Glove video, like, oh, yeah, gaming historian said the same thing about XYZ thing. I'm like, well, yeah, because the facts are the facts. So, like, I've gotten that a couple times where it's like, yeah, we both kind of like, yeah, the numbers are going to be the numbers and blah, blah, blah. But I don't really get too many where people are like, outside of the Jaguar video, where people are like, oh, you really corrected me on XYZ thing. I used to get people that tried to correct me all the time, but like, I think now I have a somewhat of a reputation where people understand. And I show a lot of the sources as I'm talking about it in my videos, partly to like show people, hey, yeah, I researched this. And it also so that they understand like I'm not, I don't know, just like copying like a Wikipedia article or something like that, which some channels tend to like just read a Wikipedia article
or read a page from RetroRGB.com word for word, including my mistakes. So I correct the mistake on the page, and then somebody sends me a video and says, "Hey, Bob, I think somebody copied your page," and they read it word for word, including the mistake that one always. That everybody has their own ego. That's where mine kind of jabs me in the side, where I'm like, oh, you didn't even call back my website, and you read every word off the page. So
that's crazy, man. The weirdest thing I had happen with like somebody trying to correct something, it was a Jaguar video. It's so weird. So I talked to Leonard Trammell. Like he saw like had made like a little preview for it on a Jaguar forum, and he commented, hey, if you need any information, please, reach out to me. Very, very nice of him.
That's awesome.
And he did not need to do that. So, I'm very grateful to him. I sent him like 2 pages of shit of questions. And I think the first thing, I mean, he answered everything. So, I mean, nice guy. But the first thing he wrote was, good Lord, this is a lot or something like that. So I think that's probably the last time he's going to offer help to someone. But anyways, he ended up giving me a bunch of information, and I asked him something about the Alpine board, and I don't remember exactly what the thing was that I put in, but I think he was trying to say that it wasn't the Alpine board for something, like a particular board or something. And it literally says on the board that it's the Alpine, like it's actually like printed on the board. So, and I asked a few other people about it, and some of the people I had talked to in the Jaguar community, like Kieran Hawken, like he writes for it's a magazine in the UK, I can't remember, but a gamer magazine. He's done a bunch of Jaguar stuff. I asked him, I'm like, hey man, like Leonard told me this. I've been told that his memory isn't the greatest with some of this more technical stuff, and this board literally says on it it's the Alpine board. He's telling me it's not, and he's like, no, it is. And I reached out to a couple other people that are in the know, so I left it in the video. He like left this comment like on like this Facebook page. I told him blah 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 blah, and then he like said like 2 other things that I said that weren't true, but he had told me them. So I had to like post like a screenshot from like my conversation with him. It was real awkward, man. Like I was like, dude, you told me this. Now, if what you told me isn't correct and it was just like a mistake, I'll go back and I'll change the whole video. Like I don't have a problem, but he never replied back. So I don't know if maybe he like mistyped or something, but it was real weird.
I am fascinated by psychology. And you touched upon 2 things that always, to this day, blow my mind. Number one, if somebody was told something or heard something as a kid, and you present evidence that is not true, they lose their fucking minds as an adult. Anything from like the Jaguar really is a 64-bit console, like you're lying to me. You could have 2 people in the same room, dead sober, in a well-lit room, looking at the same thing, and have 2 completely different memories of what that thing was. And my little brother and I, every once in a while we'll talk about this. Depending on our levels of drunk, we either end up high-fiving or yelling, but it's all good. But like, we have completely different memories of a lot of the same stuff as kids, and it always fascinates me. So I bet you Leonard had a whole bunch of thoughts on things, and completely remembered it from a different perspective. Or he's nuts. I mean, that's,
I mean, but again, I mean, it was really nice of him to offer and to take the time to. I'm sure it took him like 30 to 60 minutes to answer all those questions, and he provided a lot of details. So I mean, I have no issue with him, you know, or anything like that. But it was just like weird, man. Like, okay, yeah, I get you said no about the Alpine board thing, but I can't ignore what's printed on it, number one. And number two, the other two things you're complaining about, I have a screenshot from you telling me these things.
Yeah, you know, when it comes down to stuff like that, I try to my best in life, but certainly in the videos, if I look back at a situation like that, as you did, and I think, you know, I really did my best. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but I absolutely did my best, and this is the best representation that I had. You know, I would love to make everybody happy, but that's not how life works.
Yeah.
So you did your best, you did your research, and that it is what it is. So.
Yeah. And I've kind of come up with I mean, like now what I do now when something like that comes up, which those situations don't come up very often, but when I've got like two like very reliable sources telling me like if I've got two people that worked at company X telling me two different things about the same thing, I'll usually present both. I'll be like, look, this is what, you know, if you do some research, this is what you'll find out on the internet or in books, blah, blah, blah. But this is what so-and-so says. Like, I'll just present everything. And, you know, like, look, this is what it says. Because a lot of times, like, it's about the most inconsequential, like, shit. Like the Jaguar being 64-bit or not. Like, does it really matter ultimately if it is or isn't? I mean, bits don't really matter. Like at the end of the day,
that's
you know?
that's a different example though, because if there was never the bit wars, if that thing never happened, no one would give a shit if it was really or not. It was just the fact that Jaguar's entire marketing was that, like, look at all these puny 16-bit consoles, and we're so much better than you because we're 64, and that's why it was kind of a big deal.
Well, no, I agree. Then it was a big deal because of the marketing, but I mean now, just to put it in context, what I mean is like, if I'm talking about whether or not the Jaguar, and I think this is actually how I transitioned it in the video, whether or not it's 64-bit or not, and I say, okay, they market it as 64-bit. People say it isn't because they think it's these 232-bit chips, blah, blah. Like, I'll present everything. I'll be like, regardless of all of that, it could have been 1 million bits. It doesn't matter because what they were using was the 68,000 anyway. So that's kind of what I mean. That like,
and that's what hit home for me in your video when you said it like that. I was just like, shit, man, that is the perfect icing on the cake right there. That is,
yeah. You know. They could have put a jet engine inside of it, and it wouldn't have mattered, you know. But it's just too bad, man. It's such a cool looking console. Like, it's one of my favorite shells for a console ever. Like, it's so sleek. It looks futuristic. It looks cool.
Agreed. It had so much potential of different things that it could have done. So
then you put in Kasumi Ninja, and you're like, oh.
But you put in Rayman, and it looks great. It looks
Rayman's
really well
awesome.
done.
Yeah, that's true.
Some of them do crack me up, like Atari Karts. Like, what a very bad ripoff of Mario Kart.
Mario Kart, yeah. It's so weird. I mean, and that's not like a bad looking title, but again, it's not a title that you would look at and go, oh, 64 bits.
Exactly.
You know?
Do you think there is one game from the Jaguar that as soon as you look at it, you get the feel that you're looking at, well, next generation back when it was out? Because I never got that feeling, I got to be honest. Whether it was the commercials back then, owning it now, like... There's
oh my God, is it Iron Soldier? Is that the one I'm thinking of? The second one, the one that was like the CD?
Yeah.
Version like that one, I could see somebody looking at it and being like, oh, okay, this is definitely a step in the next generation. I know that there were some like titles released later on by Songbird, I think, that were like some higher quality titles that actually made use of the other 32-bit chips of Tom and Jerry, and they looked nicer. I don't know if I don't know if I can think of anywhere I'm like, oh wow, that would have blown my mind or something like that. Some of them like certainly looked pretty damn good, I thought, but I thought it was on par with like a 32X or maybe something a little better, like Alien vs Predator. You look at that, it looks like what you could imagine the best looking 32X game looking like or something, you know?
Yep.
But nothing like that as a kid for me, at least in 1994, said, ooh, 64-bit, you know?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was like Checkered Flag was, hey, this is almost as good as Virtua Racing for the Genesis, and like,
Right, right.
when you played something like the Sega Saturn, I barely played that as a kid. I think I mostly just played whatever the in-store display at FYE had, but every one of the old arcade titles that was re-released on it looked identical. At least in my eyes, as a kid, looked identical to the arcade ports.
Yep.
And revisiting it as an adult, some of the arcade, or at least the 80s arcade ports, are as perfect as one could get, because it's not emulation. They rewrote it for the Saturn everything was using, like, Outrun looks exactly like the Outrun arcade in my opinion. So some didn't hold up as well, Daytona obviously, but still, it was pretty cool. So
yeah, man, I agree. There was so much wasted potential with the Jaguar, but
so out of all your videos you've done, you got some obscure stuff, you got some more mainstream. What do you think's your favorite so far?
I don't know, man. It depends like what time of day you ask me, but I'm really proud of the Game Shark video just because I had to do that. That was probably the one where I had to do the most deepest research for. Like I told you, I had to go to the library, and I ended up like ordering some business registrations, like from like from like the 90s and stuff in the early 2000s that I couldn't get online. There was a lot of like dots I had to connect to that people hadn't connected before. So like that's really cool, like, and gratifying to see, like, when people watch the video, they'll be like, oh, I didn't realize that this about this company and that, because they had between the Action Replay, the Game Shark, the stuff with STD, like its parent company, like there's just like this tangled web of like all these companies like that have to do with it that's so like weird and random. So I was really proud of that one. The Sega VR one, just because that's another one where a lot of people had like all the information. The information was honestly really easy to find on that one, but like nobody had really like put it all together. At least not that I saw. I could be wrong. So those are probably the two like proudest of, but like the one that like is probably my favorite, which like has almost the least amount of views, is actually the Digital Pictures one.
Really?
Yeah. I think
my really was not in that. It's not the surprise that it was your favorite. It's the surprise that it had one of the lower views, because I loved that one. It sucked me in, and I felt that was like straight up documentary style right there.
Thanks,
that could have been right on Amazon if you wanted it to. But
thanks, man. Yeah, man.
I as many views as the other.
I thought it was gonna be like, I hate to say like a hit or something like that, but I thought it was something people would be interested in. Nobody cares about FMP, is what I learned. Nobody gives a shit still.
Yeah, I think I really just decided that I have no idea what's going to be a hit, because I did one or two that I was like, as a gamer and as a hardware nerd, this is something that I would kill to see. I'm so happy I get to put this together, and it's got like 1,900 views. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, we're all nerds. How do we not like this? So
it's crazy either, man. Like, you just never know. Like the Sega VR one, I'm like, I thought no one's gonna watch this because nobody knows about it. No one's gonna be searching for the Sega VR. Like nobody remembers that there was like a random Alphabet cereal commercial with a giveaway for the Sega VR. Like I don't know why I remember it. You know,
I don't remember the giveaway, but I definitely remember almost everything else from that. And it was so fascinating to watch you lay it all out, like just in a really easy to follow video. Because I remember distinctly having a conversation with one of my friends about what was the motion thing, the activator.
Yeah.
Like, what if you could play Mortal Kombat with the activator and the Sega VR?
Yeah, and that's how they were marketing it in a promotional video too.
Absolutely, and it was one of those things where I think it was right when like the activator was released in a magazine, not released, but like talked about, debuted in a magazine, and then they're talking about Sega VR, and we hadn't seen any videos on it, and one of my friends said something like, so how the hell are you going to try to perform like a jump kick or like the Liu Kang thing in the air? He's like, this all sounds really great in the magazine, but how is your fat ass going to do a double backflip and flip? I'm like, God, you're right. Like, I didn't think of that.
Right.
Stop stealing the awesome of this.
Yeah. And you know, with the Digital Pictures thing, like, and it was the like Sega VR video, like, I think it might be my most watched video now, or second most watched. And I don't know why, because like again, like it's not like people were looking for a Sega VR before that, but the Digital Pictures one, man, I just think like Tom Zito himself has a really interesting story. You know, he like whether you like FMV games or not, he had a vision, and man, he like really went for it. So I just think his story, the story of digital pictures, like it's fascinating to me, and what those guys were trying to do. And the last game that they were going to put out, the demo for it is really good. And it's like it looks like you're moving like in the FMV world, like you're in control. A little limited, but it's crazy that they found a way to make it look and feel like you were there and like you're really in control. And I was so bummed that that's the only video that actually bummed me out when it underperformed. Because otherwise, I'm like, whatever. You know, I like doing it for me. You know, and yada yada. You know, like a video doing well or people liking it is the icing on the cake. But I was genuinely bummed out about that, just because I think it's like a cool story that, like, if people knew about it, maybe they'd look at FMV a little differently. And what like they were trying to do. You know, it was a huge risk. Those games were like, you know, $6 million a pop. You know, in the early '90s to make. Like that's an insane amount of money for them to have spent on that.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I don't know. That I'll never not be fascinated by it, and I think at this point I'd rather watch videos about FMVs than actually play FMVs. No offense, but like it was such a weird part of my life, just because, you know, I'm a little kid, and like, you know, I loved video games, and now you could see people in games, and they had some terrible acting, but they actually had some that was pretty cool and pretty convincing. And I mean, Seventh Guest legit creeped me out as a kid. Not creep me out like stay up at night looking for monsters, but like every other scary game, it's just a game, whatever. But this one, like, you know, I got really into it, and I think a few of the FMVs caught that vibe of whatever they were going for.
Yeah, I think FMV games, like, they're now as an adult, they're fun to play like with somebody in the room with you or whatever, and you're kind of riffing on it and enjoying the ridiculousness of it. Like they're definitely more fun to live stream than to just sit here and play by myself, you know, or something like that. Yeah, there's totally with a few exceptions, you know.
I genuinely loved Night Trap as a kid too. I loved it before the hype. I loved it before the ban. I thought it was like, especially when you started to learn, you know, your little writing down your cheat sheet of patterns where everything goes. And now I'm too impatient for it. But then the fact that you press the button and did I get the trap in time? And if it wasn't, like, then the auger walks over and it's the cheesy kill scene. Like, I like that. I thought that was really cool for its time. But
yeah, I agree 100%. Like, and I'm the same way. Like now, like I went to play it about a year ago, whenever they did the re-release, and I was like, I didn't play the new version because I know that they made some changes for the new version, but I played the original on the Sega CD. I was like, this isn't that fun?
Yeah, and you know, that's I'm one of those people that I always want to get the best quality out of the console, obviously, but like, it does kind of grate on me a little bit when people say you're supposed to be watching it in composite video because that's what the designers designed it for. It's actually not quite true.
That's what they had.
That's all they had, right? But the one thing that did make a huge difference was when I was, you know, the little kid with whatever crappy TV I could scramble to get. It was such a bad quality TV that you didn't know how bad some of these things looked.
That's true.
So while I would never prefer to go back and watch it on that awful ass TV I had as a kid, you know, as a kid you just thought, my TV sucks. What could I do? I can't get another TV. As an adult, it's like, this looks bad. It looks bad in any filter I put it through. It looks bad on a flat screen. It looks bad on a like. So yeah, that some things don't age well, I guess.
Yeah.
So what's coming up next for you then? You mentioned that you're doing an XBAND video?
Yeah. So the XBAND, for people that may not know, it was it was a cartridge that went in between your console and the game, just like a Game Genie would. And but it let you play games against other people, like over the phone. So it would dial into, and it wasn't just that, you could get email on it. They had tournaments that they set up. It would match you against other people based on your skill level. People could build profiles. There was like news you could get daily on it, and the email, it was like a regular email. You got like an xband.com regular email address. You could send email to any internet email address. So it had a lot of features that like Xbox Live launched with, which is like nuts. Like it had avatars, you had like screen names, you had a friends list you managed. People would like create clans on there. So it's really, and it worked really, really well. I didn't have one, but my neighbor, my cat is just right in front of your face. My neighbor had one, and for the Genesis, and dude, to me, like, it fucking blew my mind. Like, I'm 14 years old and I'm playing with somebody somewhere else. It was like he only did like the local connection, but somewhere else, like in Florida, and it's just like we're playing Mortal Kombat 2 right next to each other. And then afterwards, I can like chat with them. You can send the after your match is over, you can choose to rematch them. You can try and find somebody else. You can go to XBAND's website and see like where you're ranked, where people are ranked. Like they had a top 10. You could win prizes if based on like tournaments you won that they would hold. Like it was insane.
That is so far ahead of its time.
Yeah, and the craziest thing to me, well, one of the crazy things about it was a 2400 baud modem, which is like the slowest thing possible.
Huh.
But it worked. What they did was, you know, when you had a modem, it compresses data, and then it tries to compress as much as it can, and then send it all at once. Mm-hmm. Well, that can actually cause latency because it takes time to compress all the data, and the faster the modem, actually, the more latency you can have because of that. So what they would do is like they would actually send the button presses uncompressed. So it was like the opposite of the way a modem would normally work. So there was like basically like almost no lag. If you were playing long distance, you could run into like maybe a frame or two of lag. But even then, it wasn't really like that noticeable, especially if you're just like a little kid and you don't know any better.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, it's crazy. And what's nuts is that right now there's a group of people that are they're very, very close to making it work again over the internet. Like
yeah, that's going to be a little tricky because of the latency part, though.
That's the last. I don't want to give too much away. I mean, they've got it to a point. All the features on it work. There is like an adapter thing that you have to buy for, but I mean, it was like $13. They're pretty close to getting rid of the latency bugs, though. I mean, I've seen some of the gameplay, and hopefully within the next few months they'll have that sorted out. But they're really, really close to having it working. And they're working on some other things for it too, like some other new features. But yeah, dude, that's my next video. The story behind them, it's crazy. It's like a bunch of people from Apple came over to work on it. Like they hired Joe Britt from 3DO like in the middle of the night at 6 a.m. Or I'm sorry, he came over like at 3 a.m. to their offices because they would just stay up working all night. And they hired him like 3 hours later. He was like sick of 3DO or something. And I got interviews with the one of the main guys that worked on it from an engineering standpoint, and he was also involved with just some of the general marketing and some of the other decision making. So I've got a long 3-hour interview with him that I'm using a lot of in the video. I've got a couple more interviews lined up with some other people that worked on the XBAND. Like one of them went on to create or co-create Android. Another one created the Play Store. One of the founders of the company that created XBAND went on to make WebOS. And OnLive.
Wow. These are not small things.
No, they're not. Like, so these guys, that's actually been what's made it take such a long time is like, so these guys, they've seen the preview, and the guys that are working on bringing the XBAND back, they have become friends with these guys, and they actually have like leaned on them for help with some stuff. So they're the ones that got me in touch with these guys and basically allowed me to get the interview with the main guy that I needed. So at least I got that interview done. So what's holding up the video I've been working on for months is getting these last few interviews. Because I don't want to just use the one interview. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd like to get a couple other talking heads. But these guys are so busy. Like, they're still very involved in the tech industry. And they're all, like, freaking millionaires, and they got better things to do. You know, so, like, I've had a lot of, like, rescheduling, you know, the at the last minute and that kind of stuff. But I'm going to give it, like, another month to try and put these interviews in. And if I don't get them, that's fine. I mean, I don't really need them. I have a bunch of other research, and the guy who I did get the interview with, he was literally the third employee. It was the two people that founded the company and they only created the like a very basic prototype of it. And then this other guy, Constantine, who came in and he did like almost he hired like the team that did everything else, and he was like there in the thick of it with them. So I'm really excited, man. I like the stuff that XBAND could do is fucking insane.
I was excited before. Now I'm really, really excited.
Hardly anyone knows about it or remembers it. Like it was like around for a really short period of time. Dude, did you remember that show Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman? Mm-hmm. So really big show at the time, right?
Oh yeah.
When they launched it, Dean Cain and the guy that played Jimmy Olsen played a game of Madden 95 in LA against two other guys. I can't remember their names, from the New York Jets. And they were like at a store in New York. Wow. And that's how they launched it. And like I didn't remember that.
No, I definitely didn't.
which is like nuts. Like, how did this thing like the marketing was great? It was only $20 for the XBAND modem, $5 a month for the service.
Was that the only cost?
Well, there could be more if you ended up opting for long distance, because the way it worked, it would dial into XBAND servers, match you up with somebody, download your email, download the news, all that shit, and then once you played against somebody and they matched you up with them, it would disconnect and then call them directly.
Which is how they were able to get the lowest latency. And that's
right.
Because there was a reason. There was always whenever there was something that I really wanted that I ended up not getting, because I was one of those kids where it's just like, well, we're the poor family, so I'm gonna go mow every lawn in this fucking town until I can get enough money to buy whatever it is that I want. Whenever there was stuff where that was just like Neo Geo was unfathomably expensive, or recurring monthly costs, whatever. Maybe $5 was a lot more to me back then, but I for some reason I remember it being so much more expensive, which is why I didn't bother with it.
So that might be because initially
the long distance calling.
Well, yeah, but you could. There's an option in the XBAND menu to like not do long distance, to only do local play, but that limits the amount of players. And they did have a thing where like they would give you a discounted long distance rate for $3.95 an hour. But I mean, fuck, you play for a few hours a day every day. But the thing is, like, when they first were gonna sell it, and it's in magazines, it was gonna be $70 for the modem, and like almost $9 a month for the service.
Maybe that's what I remember. Maybe that's...
And it was like that for a long time, like, because their test market ran for like a while, and then when they went to go do it nationally, that's when they dropped it to $20 for the modem and $5. They were subsidizing it basically and expecting to make the money back in subscriptions. But the thing about it this way, they went live nationwide in 1995. The Nintendo 64 came out in 96. I mean, it was the end of these consoles' life cycle.
True.
And so, I mean, it was bad timing, limited number of games, because they had to like hack each. They had to create a game patch for every game. So, like, if you put in Mario Kart, the XBAND would say, "Okay, this is Mario Kart. This is the patch I need." It would download the patch, and then as the game started, it worked like a game genie. It would like intercept the data, manipulate whatever it needed to make it work with this multiplayer thing.
Man, you got me all fired up for your video now.
It's fucking insane, dude. These guys were like geniuses, and they were just. Anyways, I could go on forever about the XBAND. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy. They actually initially. This is the last thing I'm going to say about it. They initially set it up so that they were concerned with getting it out in time, right, for the holiday season. So then they said, you know what? All we really need to do is have it be able to update the firmware. They called it the big red button. So like, and they did end up doing that. But literally, like, when people plugged in their XBAND for the first time, unbeknownst to them, because it wouldn't tell you that it was doing it, it would download a new firmware. So they were like one of the first to do like day one, patches basically for their servers, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, especially over a phone line, right?
Yeah. Jeez. I remember when Xbox Live came out, man, and I'd experienced lag. I was like, what the fuck is this? Why is it lagging? In 1994, I didn't have this problem on a Super Nintendo. What is going on here?
It's funny. One of the most common questions I get asked, which is worded differently, but my favorite was somebody came over and they'd played my setup, and they said, this is really cool. It looks great, but how come when I'm at home, it feels like it takes longer for Mario to jump than it does on your TV. I was like, I wanted to do a backflip. I was like, that's called lag, and that's what I do. Like, this is like, I was all excited about that. But yeah, it's so funny the new problems we run into doing things that had zero problem with it 15, 20 years ago. So
yeah,
craziness.
Yeah. But yeah, man, hopefully I'll have it out within the next month or so. The script is pretty much done. I'm just, again, waiting on these last few interviews to see if I need to make any changes or additions to it. I've already edited like the first 10.5 minutes of it. So hopefully it'll be out within a month, because I need to make other content.
Well, I probably got like another 30 questions for you, but I guess it's probably a good time to wrap it up for now. I would love to do a follow-up with you at some point. Maybe if you're ever in New York City, definitely hit me up, and vice versa. So just an excuse to do a follow-up, I guess. But thank you so much for your time. You definitely have a subscriber for life. I was hooked before I met you, and now that you're fun to talk to, you definitely got me forever.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it, man. I've been a big fan of your site for a long time.
Thank you.
So I was genuinely excited about this. So that's actually why it was nice. See,
there you go.
The next person came by, just spit on them.
You're just like, who's this fat guy? Fuck this. Taking up too much. Oh, wait, no, it's that fat guy.
Oh, you're that Bob. Oh, okay.
Where's your monitor? Well, thank you very much, man. People, for anybody listening, audio only, it's youtube.com/wrestlingwithgaming, or on Twitter, you're at WrestlesGaming, so wrestles plural. And yeah, thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to whenever we do a follow-up.
Thanks, man.